I believe it's an imperative in the sense that when the humanities do their work, they really have to presume neutrality about religion in particular and religious perspectives. And so in a way they're gagged if they have something they want to say in literature or the arts that's actually in particular Christian. So for example, but on the same hand, I'd have to say this. The secular imperative is not something that's conscious. It's something we all know we can't do, that we must sort of adhere to in the university, but it's never a consciously, explicitly defined rule. It's just something that sort of exists, so that it's not actually a rule, it's just a sort of convention that we all know. And that's, I think, because secularism doesn't really have its own definition. That is, it defines itself by what it's not. So then your sort of, the expectation of you in the humanities or any other discipline is that if you stumble across something that's religious, in particular Judeo-Christian, then you must pretend that it's neutral, right? And that's what I think. I think that imperative exists in all the fields. I think the conversation about redeemed nature doesn't really come up much in the secular world. There's an assumption that we're all supposed to be good, but there's not really a plumb line on what that means to be good. To be redeemed in the Judeo-Christian world is to recognize the evil, well, basically, to use the most extreme word, the evil that still exists inside you, and to confess that, and to know that to want that to be overcome, and to confess it. It would be Judeo-Christian wise would be to be forgiven, and then also to be cleansed. I mean, there is that sort of dual purpose. If I'm faithful to confess my sins, he's faithful and just to forgive me and to cleanse me from the iniquity. So it's a process, and having been a late convert to Christianity, it's a process I've gone through many, many, many times, and can pretty much assure you that that actual process, that spiritual transaction actually really does happen. And I work with girls in jail also. And that's a very important concept for them, that whatever they've done, there actually is a way to be forgiven, cleansed, and therefore redeemed. And that's a concept they don't have at all. I mean, most of them not grown up with that kind of perspective. And so they sit in jail day after day just reliving what they've done, right? Hoping they can overcome it. But I don't think that the human nature easily overcomes these things on their own. Neutral. I believe they should be pluralistic. If we're talking about a major university doesn't claim to be a religious university, I think they need to be pluralistic in the sense that, and what I mean by that is I think they need to show the range of expression and the range of possibilities from the Judeo-Christian possibilities to these kind of neutral secular formula for whatever the topic might be. And the only problem I see is that this particular framework of the Judeo-Christian principles is actually not there. And part of the reason it's not there is that the faculty don't also know it, right? That perspective. But it's like anything else. I mean, if you want to know postmodernism, you study it, right? I don't know if it's that easy to know Christianity, just to study it, but it is our responsibility, I think, to show students what the range is. Okay, the origin is a radical conversion. So I was already a tenured professor, and actually I had a very radical dream, followed it up by seeking a friend who I was pretty certain was not a Christian, but spiritual. It turned out he was a Christian. But So it was really my own search. You know, it was a conversion. It was just, you suddenly have not completely a new nature, but you suddenly have questions you've never had before. You suddenly have insights you've never had before. You suddenly have desires. You're drawn to the good, the true, and the beautiful that you were never drawn to before. And that, because I was 41, became a kind of relentless project for me. And it wasn't something that I made that decision, particularly to be. It was something I followed. It was a sense that there was something more there was something more in the world, and there was something more inside of me that both was bad and that was good, and that there was something more I was to do with my life, and that this particular path would actually take me to a place where I could do what I was created to be. So it has been radical, which of course creates problems for everyone around you. I really thought it would have been a good plan for God to send me to Africa, but He didn't. He left me where I was. So that's a kind of challenge, to change while you're in a place that really brought you because they thought you were someone else.